It's about history. It's about preservation. It's about sense of place here on Eastern Long Island. With Esperanza Leon, I'm Irwin Levy, and this is Our Hamptons. Esperanza, good morning.
And a good morning to you.
Love the sing. You've been doing a lot more singing of late, Esperanza. You really have. I don't know if I should. It's almost like a serenade. I'm very flattered, really.
Well,
when I think about it.
Aw,
Yeah,
thank you.
It's good.
I
It's good.
am.
You have a good voice, by the way. I think it's not too late
you,
for you to have a
Irwin.
second career, Esperanza. You really.
American Idol awaits, yeah.
Exactly. Potentially. So,
No, thank you.
now, Esperanza. We often talk on our Hamptons podcast how we've used this term. We've used so many terms a lot, but this one we've used a lot, how something happens organically. Now, we did a podcast recently. It was all about the Grace Estate, Barcelona Point, enormous masses of thankfully preserved land within the
Correct.
town of East Hampton.
Yes.
And the individual that was a big part of that story was that landowner, Ben Heller.
Yes.
Now, Ben Heller, and I think our audience is really going to appreciate this podcast today, Esperanza, because we gave that side of Ben Heller as the landowner and the whole thing of how that deal went down.
The developer, in other words, is sort of like the bad guy in the movie in some people's minds, right?
Right. Ben Heller, the developer. Very good. Thank you for that. Yes, and that's really what he was, a landowner. But Ben Heller had another side to him, and it's a side very, very relevant to Eastern Long Island, enormously relevant.
I could say sort of like the last episode, that episode that you're referring to, he was could be considered the antagonist because we're always talking about casts of characters, and in
Correct.
this case we could call him a protagonist.
That's absolutely true, and a pioneer in a lot of ways in terms of the ABEX movement as well. As a matter of fact, to get right into it, a March 2021 article in Art News by Maximiliano Duran referred to him in that way. Ben Heller, pioneering collector of abstract expressionism. And then he quotes, "There's nobody else in that league."
Yeah. Well, once people hear about this, and if you know who he was already, that definitely, it's well supported, well documented. This
I agree, and Esperanza. I mean, there was a certain amount of risk. I mean, a lot of risk in a lot of ways to amass any kind of art collection. Yeah, I guess it's easy for somebody worth 8 or 9 digits to buy Picassos and Renoirs and everything else, but
it's easy when it's a confirmed value, right?
Correct.
Right. And most people start that way. Oh, well, this is a fairly recognized artist. It's a safe investment.
Exactly. And
I don't think Ben Heller was buying with the idea of an investment in that regard.
Exactly. And that could be, and this is a topic we've touched on in past podcasts, how, people, some people buy art as a commodity. Some people buy art because they want to live with it. And, I guess we could say, in fairness, it ultimately became a commodity for Ben Heller.
Yes.
But that, from everything I've read, wasn't his intent.
Oh, no, I think his instincts just paid off, and he was very strategic and smart about things, but he was no dummy, but it was his efforts that really put these artists, a lot of them, on the map.
Exactly right. And that's really well said. He was drawn to the work. And that was the bottom line. He wasn't drawn to the work as well. I'm going to cash in 20 years, 30 years down the road. He was drawn to the work when really not many other people, in all candor, really were. And we'll get into this, as we get along. And again, going along on this article, and we talk a lot about timing, when he began seriously collecting abstract expressionist work, it was during the 1950s. And this article is even saying museums like MoMA, Museum of Modern Art, they ignored this moment,
Oh
right?
yeah, they were much more Eurocentric. It was with Alfred Barr, the Picasso, Braque, African, influence of African art. That was the focus.
Exactly. And Esperanza, if we want to bring it, since we are our Hamptons podcast, if we want to bring it local, if you recall when we had our conversation about the Signa Gallery, we spoke about how Guildhall at the time wasn't really all in on
Oh,
abstract
no,
expressionism.
really. I mean, it's like you had to leave the country to become a sort of a prophet in your own land, right?
Exactly right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, so the point was he began seriously collecting. And as I'm going to quote Anne Temkin, who was the chief curator of painting and sculpture at MoMA, is quoted as saying, Heller really rushed in headlong. He wasn't someone to say, let me take a gamble on this small picture so I don't really commit myself. He committed himself 1,000%, which is he believed in what the artists were doing.
Right. Right.
Right. You know,
Yep.
and like the respect, as usual on our Hamptons podcast, we're sometimes almost starting at the back end and going backwards. We do this a lot. But Andrew Fabricant, who was the COO of Gagosian at the time, this guy was the last of his kind. There was no one in that league. He was spot on all the time.
And I mean, when this article was written, he had only been dead a couple of years, all right?
Exactly.
2-3 years. Yeah.
Exactly. And Esperanza, to your exact point, early on, and look, everyone who knows our Hamptons podcast, Esperanza has a background in art history, but he started out collecting European modernism until he ultimately turned his attention to things more contemporary. He bought and sold, several things at Sotheby's, but it was during the early years, and Heller turned himself. He was a frugal collector. Now, whether that was, he just didn't have the funds at the time. I mean, I don't think he grew up poor, but I don't think he was
definitely
made of money.
not.
Right,
No,
but he
right,
wasn't made of
but it
money
was
either.
right, exactly.
Yeah,
He had a fairly privileged upbringing with a family that had a textile manufacturing business, but which he became part of, obviously. But he wasn't, to today's standards of billionaire.
Yes, exactly right. And it goes on to say how he was termed somewhat, as like we said, a frugal collector. He gave himself a cap of $1,000 on a single artwork. Remember, this is the 1950s. $1,000 meant something in the 1950s, so we're going back. But he would make exceptions. He bought a Rothko for $1,350. Okay, that's
Oh, big spender.
That's $1,350. But when you have a cap of $1,000 and all of a sudden you're exceeding that by 35%, that was a commitment, Esperanza, right?
But wait, that piece by Rothko was discounted from 1,500. So he actually did get it for a little bit of a discount.
He got a little bit of a discount, but in all fairness, let's just say we could say he was a little out of his comfort zone at 1,350, right? I mean,
right. No, and I think that's a really smart, this is message to all potential collectors of art out there. This is how it's done. You set yourself a cap. I mean, that's a really good way to do it. And actually 1,000 nowadays could buy you some really beautiful artwork by some very, new artists. So that's, buying what you like.
And that's sort of, he was mimicking what really gets done now. Again, granted, $1,000 then we could perceive might buy more than $1,000 now. But again, that's really how we started. Heller's parents, like many parents viewing something their children do, thought he was crazy.
I love this.
All right, we got to say this, Esperanza, right? That when he bought his first Rothko, Heller's parents called it, and I quote, the diarrhea painting, okay. Right. It reminds me of, I'm going to digress for 30 seconds. It reminds me of when my wife and I came out here in 1989, invited to someone's house for a day, being young and stupid, we said, hey, we had a good time. Maybe we should buy something out here, right? The typical kind of story. And of course we did. My in-laws, my mother, what are you, crazy? What are you doing? What's going on? Well, of course, it was the greatest stupid thing we ever did, and everyone followed us out afterwards. But that's
there
a
you go.
conversation for
Reminds
another
me of
day.
Leisha Rama.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. Doctor. Right. I can't
Yes.
think of.
Yes.
Okay. So anyway, and it also, Esperanza, this is an important point we should really bring into play here also, in terms of the timing we spoke about. New York sort of replaced Paris
That's
as
right.
the art capital of the world.
Yeah. After World War II. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, a lot of these European artists actually moved to this country or were here temporarily anyway. So it was like a melding of minds.
Exactly right. It was that great way of putting it. It was a melding of minds. So not only was he a risk taker that ultimately became very rewarding in terms of the timing of when he embraced this movement, also the transition from Paris to New York. He was in, shall we say, the right place at the right time. I mean,
Yes.
everything sort of comes together for him organically.
Yeah. The stars aligned for him.
The stars aligned. The stars aligned. And it goes on how Heller frequently bought works by the artists he collected after they were completed, and it required an act of faith. He bought a Barnett Newman piece, then the largest painting the artist ever made, 8 feet by 18 feet. Okay? Ben Heller lived in a New York City apartment.
Right.
I mean,
good point. I mean, maybe right? Substantial size, but
it might have been. But still, no matter how big your apartment is, 8 feet by 18 feet is going to take up a lot of space.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, we got to take that into play. Now, obviously, this painting now resides at MoMA, but the point was, I guess you could say he didn't let anything stop him. If he liked it.
If he liked it. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And, it wasn't like, oh, where am I going to put that?
hey, Esperanza. I was sort of like a Ben Heller when you and I first met.
I totally agree. That did not inhibit you. It wasn't like, oh, where am I going to put this? Right. I mean, I'm all for bathroom art.
Exactly. And, here I go digressing again, but we do this on our Hampton's podcast, and again, we did a podcast on this, but that was how Esperanza and I first met. And I always used to say to Esperanza, and I was sort of proud of myself for saying this to you. I really have to pat myself on the back. I'm not buying anything to match my couch.
Correct.
I'm buying it because I love the piece. And if I love the piece, I'm going to find a place for it, right?
Yes. And you would actually match the couch to the art.
Exactly.
No, I'm kidding.
Exactly. Well, you know what I mean. But yeah, that's our Hampton's podcast audience. There was an episode how it all began. If you want to go back and go down memory lane.
Good plug, Irwin. Good plug.
I'm very subtle in my Queens way. Anyway, but we got to do now. Again, we are our Hampton's podcast, so ultimately, especially Esperanza, I guess when we talk about abstract expressionism, all roads always tend to lead to Jackson Pollock, right?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, that is the household name, the figurehead of abstract expressionism, if there is one. Yeah.
If we played word association and I said to you abstract expressionism, there's a fair chance that you might first say Jackson Pollock.
Well, there's a reason why the home of Jackson Pollock and Lee Krasner in Springs is a National Historic Landmark.
Exactly correct. And to that point, great segue, Heller was close to Jackson and Lee Krasner, and as mentioned here, would often visit their home in East Hampton. And it's where he saw number 31, 1950. And the painting's name, I'm quoting here, came from Pollock's feeling of being one with the world and with nature. And this was a topic of dinner conversation between Pollock and Heller. And Heller describes how he was bowled over. And at the time, again, 1950s, paid $8,000 for a Pollock piece. Now, again, a guy that had a comfort zone of $1,000 going all in for $8,000. Okay, Esperanza, that's saying something.
That's a leap of faith again. Yes, yeah.
Huge leap of faith. But again, and we really, and I do want to express this because, we spoke about one Ben Heller previously, Esperanza. We got to talk about this Ben Heller. he bought the work because he loved the work. This was not, I see this guy, I'm gonna make a fortune off of him down the road. No one could have predicted that. No one.
But I
You know.
also love there's this description of how that title came about too, which is they were sitting in that backyard on
Right.
Accabonac Harbor and chatting, sitting in the grass with that surrounding. And if anyone's ever been there, I mean, and you can find imagery online, it's stunning, natural beauty
Exactly.
like no other. And that was the moment where Pollock said he felt as one with nature, with the earth, with everything. So it really speaks to this place also, and also how in that moment Heller was just captivated by the conversation, the place, which is such a contrast to our previous episode on him, which
Exactly.
there he was
Really, really
developing
true.
all of these places.
Really true. And I never, as a slight sidebar, we don't know when specifically Ben Heller got to East Hampton. I don't know if it was visiting Pollock and Krasner that was the
Yeah,
impetus.
I
I would
think
think it was, right?
I think he had a sort of a chance encounter with them. I would say it's probably like around 1950 or just 49 or something like that. He had just started collecting in the previous 2-3 years, right, post-war.
Yes.
And they established a friendship, which is really a testament. And as we were talking about offline, Lee Krasner was known to have said that Heller was Pollock's like a best friend.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, it might have been, again, now this is an assumption. We don't know if it's, but maybe the encounters with Pollock are what got Heller out to East Hampton to begin with. And then the other part of the story, not just his own home and living there, came about inspired by Pollock, inspired by the surroundings. But again, we're not sure. That's getting a little bit off tangent. But so he paid $8,000 for this painting, and then in '57, pushing it down a few years, purchased a really famous Pollock work from '52 called Blue Poles.
And
More on this.
that was a secondary market because he purchased that from another collector, the
Exactly right.
Olsons. But also
Ex
of note is that at this point, 57, Pollock had died the previous
yes.
year. So
Very good point. A very good point. I'm glad you mentioned that. And this piece and Blue Poles is going to come back in this episode shortly. So we're going to get to that in a little bit. But let it be said that it hung in his living room for over 20 years. He
yeah.
lived with this piece. So remember that thought. Because we are going to get back to it. His kids' recollections of it. That's coming shortly. But mentions here how Heller was friends with many of the artists he collected. And I guess that's sort of common in the art world. It's probably been your experience. A collector meets the artist, they develop some kind of, whatever connection, whether it's friendship or just, some kind of connection. Heller purchased Echo number 25 and 51, which was after he broke away a little bit from the drip technique that he really used. And in '59, 3 Pollock works. I love this story. We touched on this earlier, how with the Newman piece, getting an 8 by 18 foot piece into your apartment. So in April of '59, 3 pieces returned to Heller's apartment through a 10th floor window. And there's really amazing pictures of this.
Yes.
That we'll post when we air this episode. These crates weighed over 1,600 pounds, and they had to be lifted with a crane outside his 10 stories in his apartment on Central Park West, or Riverside Drive, where he lived before. So really crazy story. And it goes on here. The apartment, Pollock's paintings, there was just a close relationship really with the work, with Pollock. But Esperanza, you gotta love the story of
which goes
one.
back to what we were talking about of like, oh, where will I put this piece?
Exactly. Now,
this was when he was in the apartment in Riverside, which you just mentioned.
Right. Now, and boy, if this doesn't prove someone's mettle as a collector, right?
Correct. Yes.
A commitment to collecting, a commitment to the artist, nothing does.
And of really living with the artwork.
Yes. So really, you have to, he deserves the props because he realized it wouldn't fit. He'd have to move to properly exhibit it. He was living again, I think, on
Right. This
Riverside.
is 1950, right? Remember, this is
Right,
back to
right,
1950.
right.
Yeah.
So Esperanza, he took that canvas, didn't stretch it, and literally, like you would do to your children's artwork on a bulletin board. Wow, that was a good one. Stapled it to the ceiling. Come on. That's that's really Esperanza. Look at this here. Dramatic pause. The man, Ben Heller, took a Pollock and a stapler and stapled it to
Well, I
his
think
ceiling.
Pollock actually did it. I mean,
Or
they
maybe
actually because they were there together. But it really is like a testament to the, like you just said, the true collector, that collector bug. I'm going to live with this no matter in what way. And I think what a brilliant thing to be able to look up and see this.
I mean, that is really,
I love it.
I love it. Esperanza, another sidebar. I recall a show you did with Nanette Carter and how Nanette Carter, these pieces, I remember this. I was there, I think, with you when she came and installed some of them. That's the way it was back then, ladies and gentlemen of our Hamptons podcast. But anyway, I mean, Nanette was literally adhering these pieces. These weren't behind glass. These weren't right on the wall.
Yes.
Of Solar, right?
Yes. I had a few of those shows that were like that.
Right,
I love that.
Right. But I always remember Nanette's. But anyway, I digress. But Esperanza, we have to get into blue poles because this story is just had international ramifications, right?
Yes.
Okay. So blue poles. Again, going backwards first. Ultimately, blue poles was sold to the nation of Australia, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for their and
for the National Gallery.
For the right.
It actually required a vote from Parliament to spend.
Yeah, this is just right.
$2 million.
Exactly. So now let's give our audience this storyline. And again, it's framed around how there was one key work that never made it to MoMA or any U.S. museum, and that was blue poles. So to Esperanza's point, 1973, working with an art dealer, Max Hutchinson, he sold the painting for $2 million. According to this article, that would translate to about $11.8 million today, to the National Gallery of Australia, which was under construction at the time. Mm-hmm. Place wasn't even built, okay? Heller recalled, this changed the price of everything.
I bet.
Again, okay?
No doubt.
Now, the New York art world was, let's just say, upset that the work was leaving the city, the country. And in Australia, now this Hutchinson had a gallery in Australia. Australia felt the price was too high at the time. This article is describing how that was a price only old masters were getting, not a piece like this.
Yeah.
Which is, I guess, why Heller used the term, it changed everything. And Esperanza, in this vein, again, 1973, 50 some odd years ago, Heller is quoted, art, and this is really telling and I think important, art was becoming big. His collectors were becoming big. And all that stuff, and here's the key line, was becoming bigger than the work of art. Now, Esperanza, I'm looking at you on the Zoom screen. Do we translate this, bringing in that line from William Pickens?
I was just, yes.
Right?
Yes.
Right?
And this sort of really connects that to the antagonist.
Yeah. Right. Like this was
person, right?
Yeah. I mean, art was becoming big, and all of a sudden it was bigger than the art. And again, remember, 50 years ago. And look, we're not going to go down this rabbit hole. Look, income inequality in 73 certainly wasn't what it is in 2025. We know that. But all of a sudden, dare I say, thank you, Mr. Pickens, art really started to become a commodity.
A commodity.
More so.
And there's a quote. It says, he was convinced that these artists were important in the same way that Matisse and Picasso clearly were important, for example. And therefore, he was convinced, this is Anna Temkin, he was convinced that their most important works needed to be the ones that he got, right? So obviously, he was a builder of reputation. And that, she states that earlier also. And there was a business mind there. It wasn't, there's no doubt. It was definitely, he had a good relationship with the artists, friendships.
Exactly.
The artworks resonated with him, but there's absolutely no question that the commerce side of it was not completely ignored.
No. And again, not to be redundant, but we stated in the beginning of this podcast, we can make all evidence indicates that wasn't his motivation early on. His motivation was love of art. The guy stapled a painting to the ceiling. We understand this.
And I mean, to the point of, he donated this one piece by Barney Newman. I think it was, to the MoMA in 1969, right? And Barnett Newman got upset because he was like, I could have found somebody to buy this, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And he's like, no, it belongs there. He was willing to just donate this piece rather than sell it. So, it's kind of, he was a contradiction, a man of contradictions, which aren't we all complex,
Yes. Aren't we all? Really well said. And Esperanza, getting back to blue poles for a second, to your point, it required a vote by the Parliament of Australia to approve it. And to extend the story a little bit, it literally, this was the controversy that this whole thing created. It literally worldwide, it brought down the prime minister.
He wasn't reelected.
It took him down. This is how big this issue was. But, and again, going back to Ben Heller, the guy, what do you call it? A sixth sense? Call it whatever you want.
Yeah, an instinct.
Although the acquisition initiated a scandal in the country, it is now proven to be a national treasure for Australians, proving that Heller's impulses had been right all along.
Mm-hmm. And it's worth, gosh,
a zillion, right? Exactly. No question.
350 million now. Yeah.
No question about it. His daughter, Patty Adler, said how Heller, her dad, felt that Australia would take and move it into something. But we got to bringing it back when he living with blue poles. And I know we're bouncing around, but it's really so important. Patty Adler, in a 2015 interview with ABC News, talking about the sale of blue poles. And she's quoted as saying, "Nothing pained us worse than blue poles leaving the house. We all assembled in the living room." I could really picture this. We transport our audience to a place, right? We all assembled, we being the family, went around the room, and everybody had a chance to say how they felt about living with it and how they felt about leaving it.
Right. Parting with it. Yeah. Yeah. Because here they had, as it says here, they shared meals, took phone calls next to it. The kids threw Frisbees around it. Right. He never got upset about it.
Exactly.
They really lived with it. And so, I could understand. It was almost like a family member, having that piece there for 2 decades.
It really, I think this is really as good a place as any, Esperanza, to start wrapping up. But, you look at the guy's, for lack of a better term, body of work as a collector. Yes, it ultimately became very lucrative for him. No question about it. Was it foresight? Dumb luck? Probably a combination of both. But again, we got to go back to the point, because again, we gave the other side of Ben Heller and the podcast about Barcelona and the Grace Estate. He bought these pieces to live with it. And the fact that his family, I mean, I got to tell you, I read this before this podcast. We talked about it, but thinking about that, putting ourselves in that room where a family is gathered around talking about what this piece meant to their lives, growing up with it and living with it. Really, that's honestly a beauty. Yeah, there's something to that. And it's a really beautiful, there's something very beautiful about that, right?
Yes. And I would also say how beautiful in a way that he did not simply sell it to another private collector, because the fact that it is you're able to view it, the public is able to visit this piece, I think is actually a testament to his collecting also, that he wanted it to be in a museum. All of these pieces that ultimately, many of them have ended up in museums, and he promoted artist careers in that way, thinking they're destined for museums.
And,
and then the public can enjoy them, right? Because if they're in private collections, they're in private collections.
It's the same point you made just a couple of minutes ago about the Barney Newman piece, that he wanted it, in a museum. So, yes, and we're not going to rehash the Barcelona story and the Grace Estate on this podcast, and yes, the guy, obviously, these were turned out to be very lucrative investments. But by the same time, there was this side of Ben Heller and his family, apparently, how as lovers of art and sharers of art, and again, yes, did he profit from selling it to Australia? Yes, he paid $32,000 and sold it for 1.8. Yes, he profited. Okay. But, and I think that was a really great point and a great place to close, it went to a place where an entire nation is now really reveling in the glory of that piece.
Yeah. Yeah. And the world, right?
I mean, and the world.
Yes. Yeah.
And the world.
Yeah.
Esperanza, that was really...
I love talking about art with you, Irwin.
I was just going to say the same thing. Boy, this harkens back to circa 2001, 2002 in the early days, how it all began. But yeah, I love talking about art with you.
Let's do more art.
We're going to go with that. All right.
Okay.
Esperanza, always a pleasure.
Yes. Thanks, Irwin. Till next time.
Okay. Thanks so much for joining us. New episodes of Our Hamptons are released every other Tuesday. Find them wherever you get your podcasts.